Hi everyone, I'm today's moderator Miguel. Thanks for waiting. I believe most of our registrations have come in, so I would like to introduce myself again. I'm the moderator today from InspireTech, and today we will be having a joint webinar. I'll be hosting a joint webinar that is hosted by both Cohesity and InspireTech themselves. So today our joint webinar will be actually sharing more on how we can protect workers with ransomware resiliency so that we can all sleep soundly in no time. So I will first start off with sharing the flow of the webinar itself. First, we start off with an opening address by both Sheena, Managing Director of ASEAN Cohesity, and Sharon, Co-founder and CEO of InspireTech, to help kick off our joint campaign. Following on, we will be having a short poll and hope everyone would be able to participate in that. And lastly, our main event, we will be starting out the main event with Takeway Product Manager from InspireTech and Satish, Systems Engineering Director from Cohesity. It's just some logistics itself. Before we get things start rolling, if you do have any questions during the webinar itself, please feel free to post the questions using the Q&A button at the navigation bar below. Without further ado, I would like to actually invite Sheena and Sharon to do the opening address for the campaign. Sheena, please.
Thanks, Miguel, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheena, and really welcome and thanks all of you for taking time to join us today. And wherever you are joining us from, right, my guesses would be from home, from cafe, from your office, or anywhere, literally anywhere. So that is really the very real scenario right now. We are really working, joining events, joining conferences, collaborating, talking business, or even doing our shopping, literally from everywhere. So that really means that online collaboration becomes very key. And therefore, we really need to step up to ensure that protection being really truly resilient, and to be able to make sure we immune the data that we have in our environment is very important. Why? Because we really have to make sure we address the malicious activities out there. Because of this online collaboration becoming a much bigger and bigger event out there, I think it is really important to make sure we address and we fight these malicious actors to ensure that we stay tip-top in terms of being very resilient. So I think in today's conference, you'll get to hear that from the joint offering of both Cohesity and InspireTech as an EasiShare. So you will get to hear how this solution can perfectly address that. And if you do have any queries, feel free to just post your questions or your query in the chat box or in the Q&A, or just feel free to reach out to any one of us. EasiShare or InspireTech and Cohesity do have representation in several countries in this region. So not too difficult to reach out to us. And once again, thank you for taking time. Now I would like to also hand the mic to Sharon for her to say a few words. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Sheena. Thank you, Sheena, for the great introduction. Yes, hi everyone, I'm Sharon. And just like Cohesity, InspireTech also identify ourselves as a partner-led organization, and we work very closely with our channel partners and technology partners to bring to you this session. Agree with Sheena, this is a time where we really need to stay alert and also make sure our company remains resilient. So we hope that through this session, we will provide our customers a holistic approach to future-proof your organizations, and also have the ability to very flexibly, adjust your strategies as we shift toward this hybrid work model. And we look forward to your participation and your questions during the Q&A. And I shan't take up too much of all your time. Over back to you, Miguel.
Thank you, Sharon. So before we invite our speakers to do their sharing, I would like to actually do a quick poll with everyone on the following question itself. Just give me a moment while I bring that poll up. Right, I believe everyone can see the polling question right now. So basically the question asks, what is your most pressing challenges today in managing file exchange and collaboration? Some of the options are staggering data growth, security features such as ransomware. unable to extract value from data, unable to support breadth of applications and data types. Legacy solutions cannot meet requirements, or RTO, RPO objectives not being met, or all of the above. So we'll give everybody like around 1 to 2 minutes to wait for everybody to put in their polls.
Miguel, I have to say this is so authentic because I'm not allowed to vote.
Yeah.
So this
Sadly,
will truly reflect the perspective of the users out there.
yeah. So I hope everybody posts, at least like, everyone in the audience can also see how is everybody's, challenges right now in the market. Is there like similar challenges that everybody face, and we hope that both Cohesity and EasiShare can actually help to address those challenges. All right. I'm still seeing like around 50% of us are, voting. So I hope within the next 30 seconds, everybody can key in their responses before I end the poll. Okay, I guess most of us has actually polled the question, so I end the poll right now. So I'll be sharing the poll as well to everybody to take a look. So as you can see, I guess everyone is leaning towards the all of the above. They do face all the series of challenges in their organization. And the next will be pretty much on the security features itself, I guess, because of the current trends itself that's highlighting more about ransomware, infiltrating different organizations itself. So, okay, so let me stop the sharing for the poll. So thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and your challenges currently. So I would like to actually hand over the stage to Takeaway now. So Takeaway, please.
Yes, thank you, Miguel. Yep, good afternoon to all our audience. Yeah, so today we have quite a huge crowd, so I'm getting a bit excited as well. And for my first slide, we'll just touch on this topic about ransomware, right? And when I first thought of doing this topic again, some have also asked me like, oh, this whole year or since last year, we've been hearing about this ransomware thing. Is it getting like outdated? Are we getting fatigued from it? A little bit like our COVID situation, right? Every day you hear about COVID. At some point you'll be like, shall we just give up and then like, okay, just don't care about it. And I think to echo what Sheena has mentioned just now as well, I think the kind of idea that message that we're trying to drive across here is that there are things we can do as organizations to actually protect our users, to be resilient, and that is what we need to do. And similarly, on the COVID example, despite that we have some fatigue in terms of the measures and stuff, but it doesn't mean we give up. We still have to do some things, and we have to know what we can do to help out and reduce the risk in this area. And why did it all happen, right? At the end of the day, why we are talking about this is because data is at the heart of every organization now. And it comes with 3 key characteristics, which is that it comes in many shapes and sizes. Most of the data is actually unstructured. And I would like to quickly just go to this third part, which is the value of data. So this value of data has really increased in recent years. And it's not that something has suddenly everybody start to have data. Data has always been there. It's just that maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was the likes of like our Harvard University or our Stanford University, the researchers, they use a lot of data and they have the capabilities to harness the value of data in the olden days. And what happened in recent years with all the digital transformation is that now every single person and many organizations itself is able to harness this value of the data, which entirely enhances the value of data. So people like to say data is the new oil, right? It's a little bit like this oil story. It's not that suddenly in planet Earth there is oil coming out suddenly. It's just that we as humans start to realize how to unleash the potential of all these resources in order to bring our organization up to the next level. And then similarly, like any other resource, when it becomes valuable, a lot of threats will come in, and particularly ransomware has come in and evolved along the way. So for this part, right, I'll quickly go through a journey, and later on, Satish from Cohesity will further expand the whole idea about ransomware 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, and there's so much more that he will be sharing a bit later. So how do I see ransomware here is that typically what we see often is initially it starts from a user downloading an unknown malicious file, whether through a phishing email or through a USB or to personal device. And this journey then allows the ransomware to encrypt a particular employee's corporate device. So the corporate device here is a very key thing now, because I'll bring this across in the next few parts of my presentation. And then ransomware has also get more and more powerful, that they not only stop at their particular employees' devices, they want to attack laterally, so they get smarter. They try to look at things like network file shares, your file servers, and they try to spread. And then they get even smarter. They know that previously a lot of organizations, they have backups, and through the backups, they manage to recover, and the recovery capabilities have improved. So ransomware seems to be less of a threat, but then they have leveled up again and target backups. And nowadays, what we see is a bigger shift in that they don't just stop at disrupting organizations. They are also now looking at data exfiltration, so stealing the data. So all this, right, later on, Satish will elaborate even further with a journey of ransomware 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. So do look out for that in the next session as well. So for my part, to continue it, I would like to bring you all back to this idea about information security, right? And what do we look at? Typically, we look at this CIA triad. I am aware that a lot of researchers and a lot of the experts outside are talking that this CIA is no longer enough. There are more things like perhaps privacy issues or other things. But for now, I think this is a common framework that most of us are looking at. And a breach of any of this part is considered a security breach, especially from a data security perspective. And that is where all the attacks are trying to do, to break at least one of it, be it to affect the integrity of the data, to bring down the availability of data, or to leak out the data and affect the confidentiality of the data. And that is why we as an organization, we try to put in our controls and parameters around our data. That's where we have our preventive controls, detective controls, and corrective controls, which is how we recover from an incident. So the concept here that I'd like you to drive away more is that the prevention part, detection part, and the corrective part, because these three concepts will constantly flow in the next few parts of our presentation as well. So this is something that we'd like the audience to have a bit of idea in. And with regards to this CIA and information security, right, just a little short story so that you get an angle of like where we are coming from. So in the olden times, right, when we talk about file exchanges and data security related things, a lot of things is focused on actually ensuring that the files reach another place. In fact, last time in the past, we are not so worried about it being lost or it being stolen in that sense. It was more just about like, we have even a problem of like trying to transfer a large file over to the destination. And many often at times it's the integrity that is of concern. And which is why in the past, a lot of this resiliency is focused on hardware. That's where we focus on technology with regards to hard disk resilience, whether the mediums are getting corrupted, whether the physical security, such as the data center, are they secure? And the RTO, RPO was also less demanding. From a system perspective, usually when it's down for 1 or 2 days, nobody complains much because most of the processes can still go on. So this is about maybe 20, 30 years back. That was the days that, and the focus of where investments are pouring into. Now, what have changed in recent years is that we see that organizations are more dependent on data. So a lot of software, digital drive related things. And the future of cyber threats is very focused on software-based attacks. So you will notice that the solutions that we are offering later on focuses a lot on software-based response because the reason is not because hardware is not important, is that a lot of investments have been put in to protect the physical security, and those are very mature already. And that's the reason why people nowadays no longer think of breaching a data center to steal data. They are more thinking of more sophisticated ways, because it's just so hard to enter the data center nowadays, given the security that already in place there. So now similarly, from a software defined areas, we have to put in the same level of security to protect our data in that sense as well. And on the topic of like RTO, RPO, nowadays, definitely if your system is down for one day, it very, very much disrupt your organization. So these are some of the mindsets and some of the trends that I'd like to share so that we can jump into our topic proper, which is how do you defend your data with the Cohesity and EasiShare joint offering. So here, I just want to share the way we look at this is that we have these 4 quadrants here, which is protect devices, then you protect backup, detect any ransomware issues, and then you recover on it. So we have these 4 stages here. So to break it up, I'm actually taking the easy part because you'll notice that I will only serve one of the 4 things, which is regards to protect devices. And thereon, I'll have Satish continue on more like protecting the enterprise backup, abnormality detection, and rapid recovery. And so on my end, I'll focus more on the secure file exchange portion, as well as the endpoint backup and sync portion. So with that, I will just jump back to this particular flow that I mentioned just now about how attackers actually use ransomware to affect organizations. And I'll just take a little bit of easy part. I'll just focus on these 2 parts, which is actually the point of entry for this ransomware, as well as how they aspire to spread. So these are the 2 specific pain points that I will be focusing on, because there will be many solutions that always talk about ransomware. And I think the key thing that we want to understand is that what each solution can do and cannot do, and what do we cover in the whole ransomware, because this ransomware topic is sophisticated, it's complex, and it's multifaceted. So what we aspire to do today is to give you that perspective of what exactly our solution can do to help you address these ransomware issues. Okay, coming back to the point of entry portion, that is where we see a lot of times it comes into an organization typically through file exchange tools. So for example, you have your phishing emails, whereby your user just download a malicious attachment, or it could be a user plugging in an unknown USB drive that was received from elsewhere, or innocently put in a USB drive that contains a ransomware. Or they could be using third-party services whereby the security and the controls are not as strong there, and the files enter into your organization. Now then, this typically only affects one machine, one particular device. Now then, that compromised device, endpoint device, will become a point of spread, because today, like what Sheena and Sharon has mentioned, right, there's a lot of collaboration going on. We use a lot of shared systems and shared drives, and this also gives opportunities for this ransomware to come in as well. So that particular flow is what our concern is. And in specific, why is file exchanges some of the key areas that the ransomware attackers do target? It's because if we look at our organizations nowadays, we definitely have more and more interaction between external parties to receive files from external parties, as well as to share, to collaborate, to exchange that information. Now then, this increase in file exchanges has that increased traffic. With that increased traffic, there's always a higher likelihood of accident. So the analogy that I would like to say is, for example, like in an expressway, if there isn't much traffic going on, you unlikely will have an accident. But if there's a lot of high-speed traffic going on in and out every time, your likelihood of an accident happening is very common. So this reminds me of another one, like the Suez Canal incident, whereby it's a very high traffic space, and once there's an accident that happened, basically the whole supply chain was disrupted as well. So file exchanges and this data has definitely increased in their traffic and increased in importance. And with that, I will jump on to, earlier I said I'll cover 2 areas, right? The first is being secure file exchange. And to jump into this part about protecting devices, especially how users do their file exchanges, I'd like to share a little bit of how would the current situation look like if you do not have a solution like EasiShare, for example? Okay, typically the threat actor will come in from the common attack vectors that I showed just now. And then a particular employee's computer will get infected. Then nowadays, the threat actors are smarter. They try to move across systems laterally to infect other file servers, as for example. And then the connected endpoint devices of other users will now also be infected with the ransomware. And with that, then companies face a very wide spread of ransomware, and pretty much sometimes, like the earlier cases this year, you can totally bring down how an organization operations are running. So what EasiShare aspires to do here is that in terms of the exchanges with external parties, for example, when receiving files from external parties, the solution seeks to lower the risk of successful attacks. So just a little bit of caveat here is that in this short presentation, we'll not be able to go through all the features. So if there's a particular area that you'd like to find out more, feel free to reach out to our team and we can explain more details about the exact features that we use to actually address these concerns. So back to the external parties part, we have things like MFA to verify the identities of external parties so that they are legit. And then our system allows to put in security policies to limit what type of files can come into our organization. And if that is not enough, what we do is that we integrate with antivirus solutions, content disarmament solutions like DDR to further scan the files to ensure that they are not ransomware. And even if they manage to enter our organization, EasiShare works as a bulletproof REST layer, software layer on top of your storages. So what we seek is that even if one machine gets infected with ransomware, we have a layer which is EasiShare to protect your storages so that your other backend storages do not get infected and lowering the risk of the spread. And this in turn increases the overall security posture of your organization. And particularly the two keywords I like to match on is that earlier on I mentioned about point of entry and the point of spread. So what our solution aspires to solve here is to lower the risk of ransomware entering an organization, as well as in case it enters a particular endpoint device, we lower the risk of the spread. Now, given this story, you might be asking me, then how about that particular endpoint device that has been infected? That person would have a loss of productivity and he might need a solution to recover from that position, right? And that is where we jump on to the second circle that I showed just now, which is endpoint, backup, and sync. So without a solution like EasiShare, for example, what will happen at the endpoint is that typically IT is very well backed up in terms of the central systems. There's very sophisticated investment being made to secure those areas. But sometimes due to budget constraints or resource constraints, there is less attention being put into employees' endpoint devices. So a lot of times I hear that organizations expect employees to do a backup by themselves. And they say that if your laptop have any issues, the loss is on your own. You figure out yourself how do you back up your files and stuff. And that's why employees start to choose their most convenient tools. So some of them start plugging in external hard disks. Some of them start uploading into maybe a third-party public cloud solution, whichever they find inconvenient to back up their files. And in that case, then IT will start to lose control. Most of the time, what I see is that this is due to lack of resources or budget. And then when the employee files are encrypted by ransomware, sometimes they struggle to recover and there's a loss of the employee productivity. So one of the features that EasiShare has is it allows users to have that seamless sync and backup to a central repository here. So the highlight is that from the endpoint devices, EasiShare helps to backup and sync to a central repository. So this is done by implementing EasiShare on the endpoint device. And then automatically the employee files are backed up and synced to this central repository. So the central repository part is very important as well. So I'm going to move on to that later. And now there is this central repository whereby a user can recover from ransomware in case that particular endpoint machine is infected with ransomware. So now with this recovery that can happen quickly, there is a reduction in terms of the risk of employee productivity loss. So a quick recovery can happen, an ad hoc one that is particularly at the endpoint device. Now, why I kept emphasizing the central repository is because I'm actually coming to the end of my presentation, and the concept of this central repository will lead me to hand over to Satish for the second part. And how do Satish and Cohesity come in then? As a quick recap, what I've gone through is that for EasiShare part, in terms of this protection against ransomware, we look at ourselves to protect the devices because employees are the first line of defense. So we focus a lot on the endpoint processes, for example, secure file exchanges, the file exchange that the employees are doing on a daily basis, as well as endpoint backup and sync, the particular devices that the employees are working on a day-to-day basis. How do we back up and protect them and recover quickly in the sense that that particular device is affected? Then, as I mentioned just now, this one, I stopped at that central repository part. So there is a second part of the problem statement, which is that what if this central repository is corrupted as well? How do we fix this problem? And that is where EasiShare as a solution, we started looking out in the market, and we needed to find a solution to this pain point. And that is the reason why we work with Cohesity. Because Cohesity, we learned that it's the next-gen data management solution, very, very strong in terms of being that central repository to backup, protect the backup, as well as to do a rapid recovery and stuff. And that is why we find that our solution, coming in from the endpoint perspective, we need a very strong back-end platform to support this so that they have a comprehensive protection against ransomware. And I think that's why I'm also very excited about this campaign that we are doing with Cohesity as well. And with that, I'll come to the end of my presentation, and I'll pass it on to Satish next.
Thank you, Tekwe. That was great to understand the context of how EasiShare protects against ransomware. So let me get going to share my screen. Perfect. So good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. Really, thank you to join our session today. I'm Satish Murthy here, and part of the systems engineering team of Cohesity. I'll walk you through the Cohesity solution on how we protect the remote workers from ransomware. You already heard from Inspire Tech, who really inspires you, from Tekwe, on how Inspire Tech helps you with file sync and share and protects against the ransomware as the data comes in. But how about the next level? You got to store data somewhere, right? You have to store it in the storage. You have to store it for a long, long period of time, because we are not going back to tapes or books anymore. We all talk about digital, whether it lives on the cloud, whether it lives in your data center, whether it's on some other device, it has to be stored for a long period of time. And how do we protect against ransomware? That's the whole theme today, right? So with that, what does Cohesity do? So if you're for the first time, you're hearing about Cohesity. Cohesity is a software company radically simplifying enterprise data management, right? And we also take one more level up to see how we can unlock the potential of data. You heard from Tekwe, where he gave an example, you know, the oil has always been existing. Only if you pour it in an engine, you get a value of the oil. Similarly, enterprises have massive amount of data, but only if you know how to take advantage of that 10, 20, 30 years of the historical data, then you get value of that, right? If you see the next set of generation of countries which will get ahead of time is those countries who have massive amount of data and know how to use that data. Given that is the core, Cohesity's data management platform, we built a hybrid cloud architecture. We know that the future is hybrid, right? It is not the public or the private, it is combination of both. And the data can stay on premises, on the cloud, whether it is AWS, Azure, Google, or on virtual machines, doesn't really matter, right? So it's one common platform where your data would be stored in the context of InspireTech EasyShare, the data would come in from your internet, or you feed it through the EasyShare, sync and share, and you land into Cohesity. And where Cohesity resides, it doesn't really matter. It could be on the cloud, could be on-prem, could be on virtual machines. Given that's true, Cohesity is a single platform that can scale and span. What does it mean? We are absolutely hardware agnostic, be it cloud, on-prem, or the cloud that I mentioned earlier, and we can scale infinitely. What do you have one thing in common today? Unlimited space requirement. You know, people collect files, delete. There is nobody who goes into an office today to say, I will delete 1,000 files. You know, when I go into an office, I create files, I modify files. Hardly I delete anything. So it has been a rampage of growth in data, and that means you need a system that can scale at a web, which we call it as web scale. And now with that, you also need hooks like NFS, SMB, S3, or Swift, so that your applications like InspireTech can write into one common repository and can scale. And you also have one of the best things that you can think about is antivirus, which is built in, compliance solution that is built in, analytics, and also the sync and share, which you just heard from TechWay, right? All these are natively built into Cohesity. And we now heard from TechWay as well about ransomware. This is a serious threat. And you can see on my screen, given the advent of time, there is a phenomenal growth in the disruption of data. And we call that as blast radius. Wow, somebody came out with this nice name. A blast radius is clearly showing you how your data is being paid at a ransom, destroying the data, and asking or stealing the data for money. This is happening every day. So that means you just can't trust anyone other than you. So given that is the concern, given that this is on embarking this journey, and if you just think about your analogy here, with the growth of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, there is a significant raise in ransomware because the payment has become easy. The last time somebody has to collect X number of notes, right, or currencies and take it to a garbage bin close by and somebody has to drop it there. That is no more. Now I can take my phone and zip it from one wallet to another wallet. Boom, it goes there. So that means this business is thriving on cryptocurrency. So if you look at the breach, 81% of ransomware attacks are exfiltration. That means they steal something and ask you. 2x right now is about the breaches that involve ransomware. Massive growth. And it's almost like a business. 4.2 million average cost of a data breach. So that's staggering numbers. Now, if you look at what we heard from you, is that we know that customers want to detect early. 95% of them said, I want to detect early. I'm not sure about that 5%, but I would assume they did not put the poll. Right? Ransomware is changing how IT and business or InfoSec is collaborating, right? 80% said that. And about 82% are now thinking, hey, I need to have a different strategy. Because gone are those days, you work for deletion of a file, corrupting a file, or you mirror a data from one data center to another data center. That's all story, done, history. Now we are talking about a new threat, which is the ransomware, which can bring down your data center, pretty much like COVID, unfortunately. Complete disaster. Your data can't be accessed anymore. So what is your IT plan? How do you plan your business so that you're away from these threats? So 72% said, yes, let's move forward. So TechWay mentioned, yes, I'm going to share about ransomware evolution. We call the first guy as the ransomware 1.0. You know, those are the olden guys called WannaCry. You remember those good old days, right? It's not far away. It was just 4 years ago. WannaCry comes into your environment through a USB or an email, right? And it lands there, and it lands on your primary, it lands on your, say, sync and share application or anywhere, right? It can land there and then finally comes into your backup. So you take a backup from night 10 p.m. to, say, 6 a.m. Now, the challenge is your primary data center, your storage, your server, your application is all unaware of it. Right? WannaCry can be very quiet. RYUK can be very quiet. So they land, they one day encrypt everything, right? Pretty much everything. And then you know what? Cohesity being an advanced technology, we actually came out with the industry's first ransomware 1.0 detection using data anomaly. So we know what is the rate of change of data. We know what is the entropy of the data. And we had this unique ability to investigate and recover the data rapidly from our snapshot. We have a proprietary algorithm, which is a very unique one called instant mass recovery, which allows you to recover hundreds of terabytes rapidly. So this was the first evolution, right? So we had a great success at that point in time. But you know, bad guys are bad guys. They evolve. Because what Cohesity did, we look at the data, we made sure that we have absolute resiliency, we have fault-tolerant architecture, we introduce access control, multi-factor authentication, because no single user should not have so much of superpower access, role-based access control and auditing. We had anomaly detection capability, and we built our ransomware structure around it. That was great. That was really great. Until, you know, sometime the ransomware guys, we probably from Cohesity are the #1 enemy, I think, for the ransomware guys, because they went on to say, hey, how about this? Not only that I would disrupt your data, but I would also disrupt your backup data. So that's the evolution from ransomware. You know, as the good guys progress, which is Cohesity and InspireTech, the bad guys from ransomware also progress. You know, the guys come with a patch 2.0. So they came with a story to say, how about this? I will attack the data and I will also attack the backup. So they went on and they're really going after a lot of customers. And one of our customers, including Sky Lakes Hospital, were infected. And thankfully to Cohesity, we were helping them to recover rapidly. Now, how did we do that? Because these bad guys are now also disrupting the backup, not only the data sources, but they were able to infect the backup. Cohesity went on to add some more advantage here. We went on not only to recover rapidly, we also added resiliency against ransomware. So that means it becoming tamper-proof. We enabled data lock, right? We made our data repository, which is your last level of defense. You know, if you have the last $100 in the world with you, where would you keep it? In an extremely secure vault, or somewhere right in your pocket that you keep on ensuring that it is there every time, right? So making sure a tamper-resistant archive is built and the data can be kept was ransomware 2.0 protection, because the bad guys evolved. And we also added zero trust to making sure that this data stays safe and remains safe. That was fantastic. Now, this is the recent one, 2021 August, not far away. The bad guys again evolve. You know, they call it ransomware 3.0. They now went, okay, first I disrupt the data, I disrupt the backup. That was 1 and 2. Now they went on to one more step, which they call it as exfiltration. So what is exfiltration? I not only disrupt things or backup, but I also steal the data. I will steal the data of 200 GB or 500 GB, whatever it is. And I will threaten to the internet, if you don't pay, I'll ask you for money. I mean, if you don't pay, I will release it in public. You know, that is an exfiltration method. So one such attack, we call it as lockbit attack, that happened for Bangkok Airways. You can actually do a Google search. Unfortunately or fortunately, this customer had great protection already. But you know what? Exfiltration doesn't help you. Even if you have your data safe, exfiltration will take away your data and threaten you, or call it double extortion, to say that I will release your data in the public website or dark web, whatever it is. And these are threatening to business because, you know, if you take Airways, they are in compliance with SOC, they are in compliance with SEC, they are in compliance with GDPR. If the data is in public, they can close shop tomorrow. And that is a big, big threat to any business. Exfiltration of data and releasing it into public is even more threatening. So when bad guys evolve, good guys have to evolve. So Cohesity came up with a Ransomware Protection 3.0, not only to do the anomaly detection, but when the exfiltration begins, we need to go beyond that. We need to detect the exfiltration. So we went on to see how data security and data governance can be stitched together. Who has sensitive data? Who is not leaking data? Or who is leaking data? Where is your sensitive data? How do you prove compliance to authorities? So these are some things that has to be in your IT processes way from day one today. Right? If you don't have it, you got to think about it. How do you build that? Now you look at data security and data governance today. That's where Cohesity helps you to identify sensitive data, help you in terms of compliance reporting, GDPR, and what kind of data, PII data, PCI data. How do I classify them? How do I add data classification? How do I make sure I have remediation in part of the data and also have that AI, which is the machine learning and artificial intelligence to look and govern the data set for every single enterprise. So we went on to create the threat defense architecture. This is going beyond the bad guys. I'm not saying they're not going to evolve because they've evolved 3 times. We went on to create this threat defense architecture with zero trust, data resiliency at the core, right? With fault tolerance, access control, RBAC, auditing, multi-factor authentication, quorum, and continuous monitoring. So quorum was added to say, no single super user exists. You know, there is a one single super user, he or she can literally go rogue and can destroy everything. That is dangerous. Continuous monitoring, where you know what kind of data is coming in and churning in, and going beyond in terms of detection and analytics, right? Source side anomaly detection, behavioral analytics, data classification, near real-time threat detection. We built around all of these using AI. So if you look at Cohesities now, what we are offering along with Inspire Tech is to say rapidly recover from ransomware attack, resilience against ransomware, operational failure recovery, disaster recovery. So that means you have a DR recovery and also having tamper resistant architecture. So battling here the scourge, every single type of ransomware that is evolving, Cohesity had a regular answer, and we are ahead of the curve, right? We are ahead of the curve where we introduce immutable backup, continuous data protection, instant mass recovery, anomaly detection. This was about 2 years ago. We launched our data log and isolated vault as the bad guys evolve, and now we come up with data governance, right? We also added a project Fort Knox that ensures, assuming that some of your customers today have a requirement where you want to keep data away from your premises, but somewhere secure that you can believe and trust. We have our own cloud with absolute encryption, right? A bulletproof encryption, if you may call it, and securing the data onto a different cloud altogether with a isolated air-gapped architecture. So some of the best practices that I would love to share: protect your backups. Make sure that you turn on data lock. Make sure that you have multiple copies of data, 3 to 1, that still stays good, right? And you have secure your environment. Make sure that you have multi-factor authentication. Grant least privileges based on their duties. So role-based access control is extremely important, right? Know your crown jewels. Know where is your business data, where is your non-business data, where is your sensitive data, and making sure that the hotspots are removed. The last thing that you want to expose is your password, by the way, on a file. And then finally, preparing your data center, right? Preparing your organization, making sure that you have a threat levels understandable, and you know what from IT and business can be done to protect if you have a ransomware attack or a malware attack, massive large scale. So going beyond this, what Cohesity is now looking at is a gamut of threat defense architecture, right? Be it data resiliency, access control, detection and analytics. Cohesity does data protection, file services, sync and share with Inspire Tech. We do data lock. We also do replication and DR and have continuous monitoring, right? And securing next generation data center. Now, taking one more leaf ahead is the Cohesity data govern, because we got to identify sensitive data, right? you never know you have a repository of NRICs or social security number, Aadhaar card number, passport number. How do you know that? How do you identify that? How do you make sure that you're not in playing with compliance risk, like what happened with Lockbit, with Bangkok Airways? How do you protect and prevent such kind of scenario? And how do you detect and remediate? These are some of the serious issues from an IT security standpoint and also from a data governance standpoint, because both are converging. There's no more called, I am from IT security team, I am from a data storage team. That's gone, right? If we are playing the same way, I think the ransomware is going to have a party, right? So this is changing and this is evolving. And this means the growing blast radius of ransomware has to be contained, right? You can see the first evolution, which is the 1.0, you have a breach, you quickly go back to your backup. Cohesity had a great technology. We call it as instant mass recovery, which we still have, allowing you to restore 2,000 over virtual machines in less than 1 hour. That is a rapid way of recovery. So some of the largest of the enterprises in the world today rely on Cohesity. Now, the second one is where your backup is also infected or impacted by ransomware. Cohesity went on to create data lock and total immutability, where one block of data is only written once in a block. So the next block is always written onto a next location. So that way, we had an algorithm that provides absolute immutability with all the compliance certification that you would need, whether it is SEC, FIPS certification, or CEC, SE, or FIPS 140-2. So each one of these certifications are available, that making sure that your data is in compliance with most of the regulatory bodies around the world. Now come the third one, which is the newest one, where we evolve to build against ransomware 3.0, where there is an exfiltration. How do you make sure that is being detected very, very early in the game? So with Cohesity, this blast radius can be absolutely minimized. Our objective today to the industry is to make sure we flatten this curve so that the bad guys have very minimum games to play, so that we continue to do our business and do not disrupt our normal life. You know, colonial pipeline, you know, you heard that from Techway. You heard some meat industry was impacted. You know, every single business, tomorrow there'll be a water, tomorrow there'll be a power. They will just cut it because ransomware, exfiltration, if you don't pay, I will disrupt. So we got to flatten that curve. We got to disrupt the disruptors. And that is where Cohesity, along with Inspire Tech, is willing and loving to change this game with you, making sure we help your organization to make it stronger and better against these ransomware guys. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Back to you, Miguel.
Thank you, Satish. Thanks, Satish and Techway to actually share their insights across this two-part session itself. I hope everyone have actually managed to take away something valuable, and I will now actually head on towards the Q&A session. And actually, I did see a lot of questions on the floor, so I'll be actually sharing some of the questions that was being answered by Satish himself and the guys from Cohesity. So maybe I can start off with a question that was actually answered by Cohesity. This audience actually asked, how do you actually handle data in motion and data at rest on compliance standpoint? And maybe Satish, you would like to maybe add on a bit more about that?
About data at rest encryptions?
How do you handle data in motion and data at rest on compliance standpoint?
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Miguel. So Cohesity, being in the forefront of technology, today we do both data at rest encryption and data in flight encryption. So as the data lands, because we are a data management layer, the data lands on Cohesity, we do dedupe and compression to reduce in terms of the space required. But one of the key things that we do is encryption, right? These are FIPS 140-2, right? We are adding 140-3 as well to make sure that your data is absolutely secure, both on the flight and at the rest. And of course, we would have all the compliance done for you.
Okay, Ken. Techway, do you have any input in regards to that question itself, whether how EasiShare might also address that portion itself?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think like what Satish has also presented, right? They are the platform and we are application that sits on top of that. So the platform itself is definitely secure already. And what we do is that on a file exchange perspective, ours is a web application. So we rely on the industry HTTPS with the TLS encryption and stuff in transit. And then on, when we store the data through, for example, like Cohesity platform with the compliance that Cohesity has really done, the whole solution definitely end-to-end, there is that protection from that angle.
Okay. Ken, there's an audience actually asked, in terms of installing the agent, do we have to actually install the agent to the device, and how this EasiShare actually protect the device itself? Maybe David, you can highlight more about that.
Yeah, okay. So going back to the two use case again, the first one with regards to protecting against file exchanges, so against files coming into the organization. For that particular use case, there will not be any agent required since the application is fully web-based and it's through the software layer to protect and scan the files that is incoming to a user machine. And then for the second use case with regards to the endpoint backup and sync, now given that there is a need to do the syncing part, for that particular use case, it will be compulsory to install the agent as well to ensure that sync process is being run by our application, then to sync it to that central repository like Cohesity, and then Cohesity will have those features to then further protect that those backups of the end user endpoint devices. So that is that flow of how we look at things here.
I see. So actually, there's this question that's pretty much can be answered by both of you guys. So this audience actually highlighted, are the security features or anti-ransom features turned on by default? Maybe Satish, you would like to go on to talk about that first?
Absolutely. So thank you, Miguel. So all the security features from Cohesity are turned on by default. Right? As you earlier heard from one of the video, it is not an option at all. It is a default. Of course, you can have a chance to turn off the encryption and things like that, but why would you do that? You're just giving an advantage to the bad guys. But yes, every security feature, for most of them, except that you export it to a Cohesity cloud or things like that, where there is an additional premium. But by default, there's plenty of features for security and encryption that's by default.
Thank you. Tae-Wei, how about yourself?
Yeah, so similarly, most of the things are there by default. What I would jump in particular is that being our software being more towards the end user side, so our policies, configurations and stuff, it's not so much about being turned on default, but it's just that there is a flexible options to allow organizations to choose the kind of settings and what some users can do and some users cannot do. I think just now Satish has also mentioned it should be based on role-based kind of thing, because it doesn't work like, oh, you just lock down everything. There are some people that need more to do certain work, then some people that need less to do certain work, and that kind of permissioning controls and policy controls is something that EasiShare plays strongly in that sense to support that whole idea of least privilege, role-based access. So the only way it can be least privilege if the system is flexible enough to allow you to even do least privilege. So some of the older systems, you realize that they only have an option for you like, oh, admin user and a normal user. So you need somewhere in between, but you realize that then you have to give the person admin access because you can't give the person user access. And that's where some of the issues starts appearing in the older systems. And that's an area that we constantly look out for, how to create the design that suits what our customers needs.
Okay. I'll bring up this question that actually just now Satish actually typed in the Q&A chat itself. Satish, you did reply to somebody in regards to this question on how small is the minimum storage capacity for a company to obtain. And he mentioned, I believe it's scalable and I can increase as we need. You'd like to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Miguel. So how small and how scalable it can be. The scalability with Cohesity and InspireTech is pretty much infinite. We can bring in as many users as you want from InspireTech or EasiShare, and you can have a capacity of web scale on Cohesity. So both can flood as much as you want, right? We are built as a future companies, which will allow you to scale. But what is the minimum capacity, right? To have a meaningful discussion or something that you can look at the cost and say, hey, this is meaningful. I would say anywhere between 20 terabyte or X number of users that Tae-Wei can mention would probably be a meaningful start for all of us, right? Not to say that it can't run with 1 terabyte. Absolutely, any software can run. But to have a meaningful coverage and discussion, a 20 terabyte would be an ideal scenario.
Okay.
And TechWay make an answer on the number of users that may be minimum.
Yeah.
So similarly, we can definitely start from a small number, but typically we notice that about 200 users is a bit of a sweet spot where things starts to make sense in terms of the investment and the returns over as well.
There's this question by this audience, I think highlighting about the license scheme. Maybe both Satish and Teck, we can highlight very briefly on that. Satish?
Please, question again, Miguel.
What is the license scheme like?
Okay, the license scheme of Cohesity is very, very simple. It is just based on your capacity after dedupe and after compression. So assuming that you have a 100 terabyte requirement, after dedupe and compression, which we have a tool, all our Cohesity folks have a tool to apply. And if the tool says you just need, after 5x or 10x dedupe, you only need 20 TB license, that's all you need. And that's the only license you need. Simple as that.
Okay, sure. Takeaway, how about the license scheme itself?
Yes, EasiShare one is slightly more complicated, but not too complicated. So it's only two scenarios. We either go by user count, so you count by number of users that is logging into EasiShare, or we have a capacity model, which is just based on the size that is uploaded into EasiShare. So we have two models in that sense.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Anyway, thanks for all the questions that's being, being asked from the floor. And because we have reached our allocated time, I would like to actually highlight a few things very quickly so that I can, I can actually cover one more question that one of the user audience actually asked. This audience actually asked about the assets. Do we have any assets for this specific webinar itself? And yes, we do have assets that is being created on our end. We do have solution brief, ebook, or infographic itself, and you can actually highlight your interest at the end of the day. After this webinar itself, you guys will actually be redirected to a feedback form, and you can highlight your interest in terms of the campaign assets that we have created. And additionally, if you do have any questions, further questions that you might not have think of just now, you can actually put in your questions in that feedback form itself. And additionally, I would like to also highlight on the campaign page that we have. And if you are ready to actually kickstart your data resilient journey with us, you can actually click on the link that I've shared in the chat, or you could actually navigate it to using the QR code that I'll be sharing later, and also the link that I'll be sharing later. I just want to give out a shout out that we will be actually giving out eFood vouchers when you highlight your interest in regards to doing a trial with us, set up a demo session with our reps, or have a technical deep dive with our technical folks so that we can explore more in regards to how we can actually address your challenges in your organization itself. So if you are ready, scan the QR code or use the link provided on the slide or in the chat to get your ransomware battle ready kit. So thank you everybody for your time. I hope I can see you again next year. Thank you everybody.